Have you ever felt it, the sudden drop in your chest when someone you trusted pulls away without warning? One moment you're lit up by their warmth. The next, you're left staring at the silence, wondering what changed. It feels almost as if they've discovered the switchboard to your emotions, pressing buttons at will, giving you joy today, confusion tomorrow, and despair the day after. That is the danger, not that they hold the controls, but that we forget who truly owns the power supply. I have watched people, and I have lived it myself. The game is never announced. It doesn't come with alarms or flashing signs. It arrives in small shifts, a sudden distance, a half-hearted smile, a delay in their words. And before you know it, you're no longer living by your rhythm, but reacting to theirs. But here's the quiet truth. No one can command your emotions without your silent permission. The batteries are in your hands. The question is, will you keep giving them away, or will you hold them close this time? Stay with me. As we step into the first chapter, imagine this. You're standing on a stage and the lights are blinding, but the script isn't in your hands. Someone else is feeding you lines, pausing when they wish, moving you when they want. You start to believe the performance is yours. But deep down, you know the strings are being pulled elsewhere. That is what it feels like when a man toys with your emotions. He makes you believe you are in control, but really, he is conducting the play. Now imagine the sudden shift. One day his attention rains down like summer sun, warm, dazzling, impossible to ignore. He calls, he texts, he makes you feel like you are the axis of his world. But then, without warning, the warmth vanishes. His silence cuts deeper than any words could. You replay conversations in your mind, hunting for the mistake, the moment you went wrong. That's the trap. Because while you are busy guessing, he is busy winning. Here's where the Stoics give us clarity. Epictetus said, "We suffer not from the events in our lives, but from our judgment about them. The silence itself is harmless. It is the meaning you attach that cuts or heals." I've watched people bend themselves into knots to fit the rhythm of someone else's inconsistency. They become careful not to disturb the good mood, terrified of the cold one. They chase approval like air, not realizing they are suffocating their own needs in the process. That's exactly how the game is designed. When your focus shifts to pleasing, you stop asking the most important question: is this man even worthy of me? The truth is harsh, but freeing. Consistency is the real test. Anyone can shine for a week. Anyone can charm for a month. But what endures reveals what is genuine. If his affection feels like a roller coaster, highs followed by unexplained lows, that is not love. That is manipulation. From here, you must step outside of the board for a moment. Look not at the isolated moves, but at the pattern. Does he grow frustrated when you don't react? Does he try to provoke just to get a rise? That frustration is his mask slipping, because emotional control, not affection, was always the prize he sought. The Stoic approach is not to rush into confrontation, but to take notes. Quiet observation strips the drama of its disguise. You begin to see the timing, the rhythm, the way the same tricks repeat. And once you see them, you can predict them. When he pulls away, you don't spiral. When he floods you with attention, you don't surrender. You decide in advance how you will respond. That is not weakness, it is discipline. I once knew a woman who lived on that pendulum for years. She was brilliant, kind, full of life, but her joy rose and fell with his moods. When he praised, she glowed. When he withdrew, she shrank. It took her years to realize that she wasn't broken. She was simply dancing to music he chose. When she finally stopped, The silence felt unbearable at first, but slowly she realized the quiet was her own. That was the day she began to breathe again. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The game only thrives when you outsource your peace to another's behavior. When you reclaim it, the rules collapse. Your worth is not measured in minutes of his attention. It is carved in the strength of your own stance. You anchor it in who you are, steady, untouchable. This is the pivot. Because the moment you recognize the pattern, you begin to win, not by playing better moves, but by refusing to play at all. Sometimes the wisest way to outsmart someone is not to beat them at their own game, but to step away from the board entirely. You leave him with the pieces, but you walk away with the clarity. And clarity is liberation. It is the moment you see that your worth was never in his hands. It was in your choices, in your standards, in your refusal to let inconsistency dictate your heart. That's the quiet revolution, the one he will never anticipate. Entering this realization, the weight shifts. You no longer ask, "Why did he stop calling?" You ask, "Why would I allow silence to define me?" You no longer replay every scene for hidden mistakes. You recognize the script was never yours to begin with. And in that moment, you are free. Because here is the ultimate truth. The batteries to the remote were never in his pocket. They were always in yours. The question is no longer whether he deserves to hold them. The question is whether you will ever hand them over again. Moving into the next chapter, picture this. A storm hits without warning. The wind howls, branches snap, and the sky opens in anger. You can scream at the clouds, but it changes nothing. The storm does not obey your voice. It never did. The only thing you can command is your stance beneath it. That is what it means to control your emotions when someone is pulling at your heart. Now imagine the scene. He vanishes for a day, and your hand reaches for the phone. The urge is sharp, like fire. Under the skin, you want to call, to text, to demand an answer. Or he throws out a line, some cutting remark aimed at your tender places, and you feel the heat rise to your throat, words waiting to spill out. That is the bait. The net is not in his silence or his words. It is in your reaction. Because when you chase, when you flare, when you hand over your peace in a single breath, you give him exactly what he came for: control. Here's where Stoicism offers iron clarity. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He disappears. He provokes. He shifts like sand in the wind, but those are outside events. The battlefield is not in his actions, it is in your response. If he can stir chaos in you, he wins. If you remain calm, he loses his grip. I've watched this play out. A friend once told me how she broke under this rhythm. She confessed to checking her phone 50 times in an hour, waiting for a message that never came. Every minute that passed felt like proof that she was unworthy. Until one day she stopped. She said to herself, "His silence is not a verdict. It is simply silence." That shift was small, but it changed everything. Because the moment she stopped chasing, he had no power left to withhold. Here's the weapon: pause. Not the pause of weakness, but the pause of mastery. When he pulls away, you don't sprint after shadows. When he throws a sharp word, you let it pass without letting it pierce your skin. You breathe. You ask not, "How do I make him see?" but "What serves me best right now?" That single question is a sword. It cuts through impulse. It returns the ship to your hands. Seneca warned the greatest remedy for anger is delay, and he was right. Reaction is fuel. Delay is water. Pour water on fire and the flames shrink. Stand firm in your calm, and suddenly the manipulator has no script to follow. He expected drama. He expected tears, raised voices, desperate calls. Instead, he finds stillness. And nothing unsettles a player more than realizing the game is over while he's still at the table. I've felt that stillness. Once a man tried to provoke me with ridicule in front of others, a cheap attempt to embarrass. My old self would have bitten back, loud and defensive. But that day I looked at him, smiled faintly, and said nothing. The silence was heavier than any insult I could have thrown. He shifted uncomfortably, realizing he had lost before the battle even began. That moment carved itself into me as proof. Control is not in the tongue, but in the restraint behind it. Controlling your emotions does not mean you shut them away. Stoicism does not ask you to become stone. It asks you to master the current so it doesn't sweep you out to sea. Feel the sting, yes, but do not hand it the wheel. Choose where your energy flows. Not every slight deserves a response. Not every silence deserves your panic, and not every man has earned the right to witness your rawest self. From here, you gain something he will never anticipate: composure. The more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. You are no longer dragged by the push and pull of his whims. You steer your own course, and in that moment, the dynamic shifts entirely. You are not the one waiting for his next move. You are the one deciding if his moves are even worth your time. Here's the beauty. When you refuse to dance to the rhythm he sets, he has no music left to play. He must adjust. He must face himself without the mirror of your reactions. And in that space, you gain the upper hand, not through attack, but through calm. Not through noise, but through clarity. Epictetus said, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." That truth is the core of this chapter. To control your emotions is not to kill them, but to place them under your command. To decide, moment by moment, whether this is worth your breath, your time, your soul. Most of it is not, and once you see that, you become untouchable. At this stage, the lesson is sharp and simple. Survival is not enough. You are not here merely to endure games. You are here to outsmart them, and nothing disarms a manipulator faster than the realization that he cannot move you. That your calm is not for sale, that your silence is chosen, not stolen. And so the storm quiets, not because it stopped raging, but because you learned how to stand beneath it without breaking. From here, another truth rises. If control of your emotions is the fortress, then control of your pace is the battlefield that follows. Advancing to the next chapter, picture a runner on a track. At first, the pace feels smooth, your legs in rhythm, breath steady. Then suddenly the runner beside you speeds ahead, forcing you to chase. The next moment, he slows to a crawl, leaving you stumbling, unsure whether to push harder or hold back. That's what it feels like when a man plays with the tempo of a relationship, fast one day, silent the next, always leaving you to wonder what happened. Now imagine waking to a flood of messages. His name lighting up your phone, promises filling the air, plans for the weekend, compliments spilling easily, words that make you feel chosen. Then, without explanation, a void. No message, no call. The silence grows louder than the words ever did. You turn inward, asking, "Did I say something wrong? Did I do something to break this?" But that is the hook. Because the truth is, this rhythm is not accident, it is design. The stop and go is not confusion, it is control. And when you let someone else decide the pace, you are no longer moving to your own rhythm, you are dancing to theirs. Every step becomes reactive, every breath tied to their next move, and that, my friend, is dangerous ground. For once they are in the driver's seat of your tempo, they are in the driver's seat of your peace. This is where Stoicism sharpens the edge. Epictetus reminded us, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. The pace he sets is not yours to follow. Your freedom lies in reclaiming your tempo. When he surges forward, you need not match his energy. When he retreats, you need not rush to fill the void with your effort. Your rhythm belongs to you. Protect it as you would your breath. I knew someone who learned this the hard way. She told me how every weekend was chaos, cancelled plans, sudden appearances, nights rearranged to fit his whim. She believed compromise was love, until she realized compromise had become surrender. Her calendar was no longer hers, her emotions no longer hers. One evening, when he appeared unannounced and expected her to drop everything, she said simply, "No." That word was a line in the sand. He tested her, argued, accused. But she stood still, and for the first time she walked away with her peace intact. That's the lesson. Taking control of the pace isn't about playing games in return. It isn't about making him chase or leaving him guessing. It's about balance. It's about creating the space to think, to breathe, to see clearly. Because when the tempo is yours, fear loosens its grip. You stop making choices from desperation, from the terror of losing him. You begin making choices from dignity, from self-respect. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." The silence is not the wound. The wound is believing silence means you are unworthy. The rush of attention is not proof of love. It is only movement. And movement means nothing without consistency. Here's the clarity. If the only way the relationship survives is when he dictates the terms, then it is not a relationship. It is a power play, and you were never born to be someone's puppet. So what does reclaiming the pace look like? It looks like answering on your time, not his. It looks like not rearranging your world every time he appears with last-minute plans. It looks like saying, "I move at my speed. If you want to walk with me, respect it." That is not arrogance. That is sovereignty. Of course, some men will resist this shift. They are used to calling the shots. They may guilt you, accuse you of pulling away, question your loyalty. But that is only the mask of control cracking, because when you stop running at their command, they have nothing left to lean on but themselves. And not everyone likes facing that mirror. Yet here is the beauty. When you hold your pace, you filter. The ones who seek only control will fade quickly. Without the ability to push and pull, they lose their grip. But the ones who are genuine, the ones who mean what they say, will match your stride. They will not fear your space, your time, your rhythm. They will respect it because they are not chasing reaction. They are investing in something real. At this stage, you no longer live in fear of being left behind. You no longer sprint to keep up, nor stop because someone else has paused. You walk at your own speed, and in doing so, you reclaim the most precious thing you own, your peace. So remember this: your life, your energy, your heart, they move to a beat that is yours alone. Guard that beat fiercely, because once you hold it steady, no one can play with it again. And from here, we step into another truth, the fortress of boundaries, the lines you draw that teach the world how to treat you. Entering this chapter, picture a garden without fences. At first, it seems open and inviting, but soon weeds creep in, strangers trample the soil, and the flowers you worked so hard to grow are crushed under careless feet. That is what life looks like without boundaries. Beauty without protection, value without defense. And when a man is testing you, this is the ground he hopes to find, open, undefended, easy to bend. Now imagine how it begins. He shows up late, offers no apology, and you tell yourself, it's not worth the fight. Or he drops a cutting remark disguised as a joke, and you swallow the sting, thinking silence keeps the peace. What you don't see is the invisible permission you just granted. Each time you let it slide, the line fades. Until one day, the very behavior you swore you would never tolerate has become the air you breathe. That's the danger of blurred edges. They never blur by accident. The Stoics knew this truth well. Epictetus warned, "How long will you delay before you demand the best for yourself?" A manipulator thrives on your delay. He depends on your flexibility. Because if your no bends into maybe and your I don't like that softens into silence, he learns quickly that your limits are only suggestions. And suggestions are there to be ignored. I remember a friend who once told me her story. At first, the small things, late texts, casual lies, felt too minor to challenge. But years later, she looked back and realized she had built her life on exceptions. Every time she forgave without consequence, she trained him to push further. By the end, her world was full of lines crossed so often they barely existed. Her healing began only when she drew a new line and refused to step back. Here's the point. Setting boundaries is not enough. You must stand by them. A line without enforcement is nothing but chalk in the rain. If you say you require honesty, dishonesty cannot be brushed aside. If you say you demand respect, disrespect cannot be excused as a bad day. Words mean nothing without action behind them, and a man who is testing you will always probe to see if the line is real. Some will tell you that boundaries make you difficult, hard to deal with. But here's the truth. Boundaries don't drive the right people away. They drive the wrong people away. The ones who value you will respect your standards. They won't treat them as a challenge to overcome, but as a marker of your worth. And if someone grows angry at your limits, it's because they were benefiting from you having none. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." The same applies here. Waste no more time debating whether your boundaries are valid. Live them. Stand by them. Because when you do, you send a message far louder than words. My time, my energy, my heart are not free for the taking. And here is the beauty. Boundaries give you clarity. No second guessing, no endless excuses. A clear line reveals who respects you and who doesn't. And clarity is power. Because confusion is the fog in which manipulators thrive. When you can see clearly, their tricks dissolve. Will this be easy? No. There will be moments when bending feels tempting. Love can make excuses feel noble. Fear can whisper that silence is safer. But temporary comfort from letting a line slide always leads to long-term pain. And the longer you ignore your own rules, the harder it becomes to reclaim them. I once heard a story of a woman who demanded respect in her work, but allowed endless disrespect at home. She told herself it was love, patience, sacrifice, until one day she realized she had become a stranger to herself. It was not the man's betrayal that hurt her most. It was her own betrayal of her values. Drawing new boundaries was painful, but in the end, it saved her. Because the cost of honoring herself was nothing compared to the cost of losing herself. At this stage, understand this. A man who plays with your emotions will always seek to blur your lines. He will test, push, and probe. Your task is not to convince him, not to reform him, but to hold the line. Make it clear, make it firm, and let him decide whether he is willing to step up or step out. Either way, you win, because boundaries are not about controlling others, they are about honoring yourself. They are about saying, I deserve the kind of treatment I would give to another. And when you live that truth, manipulation finds no soil to grow in. So let this be clear. The strongest fortress you can build is not walls of stone, but lines of dignity. Stand by them, and you will find it becomes much harder for anyone to move your heart without your consent. And from here, another lesson rises, the art of silent observation, the discipline of watching before acting. From here, imagine standing at the edge of a battlefield. The enemy moves in the distance, raising dust, waving flags. But you do not charge blindly. You watch. You count their steps. You mark their patterns. You wait for the moment when their strategy reveals itself. That is the power of observation when someone is trying to play with your emotions. You do not rush. You do not beg. You see. And in seeing, you disarm. Now imagine how easily we are fooled by words, promises spoken with soft tones, apologies coated in sweetness, declarations made at the perfect time. Words are cheap. They can be painted bright and handed to you like gifts. But actions, those are costly, and they never lie. The man who toys with your emotions may speak like poetry, but if you pause and watch, his movements will tell you the truth. Does he keep his energy steady, or does his kindness flare only when he wants something? Does he treat you with respect when no one else is watching, or only when he needs to impress? Observation pulls the mask away without you lifting a finger. Seneca once said, "Truth lies open for all. It only needs to be seen." The trouble is, when we care, we cover our own eyes. He cancels plans and we say, he must be busy. He disappears for days and we whisper, perhaps his phone died. We fill the silence with excuses because the truth hurts more. But if the same pattern repeats, it is no longer misfortune, it is a choice, and choices reveal character. I remember a woman I once spoke with. For months, she ignored the signs, his sudden coldness, the broken promises, the inconsistency that left her guessing. She clung to the good moments and dismissed the bad as accidents. Until one day she wrote every incident on paper, line by line. The picture was undeniable. It was not a series of mistakes, it was a strategy. In that moment of clarity she wept, but she also smiled, because the truth, though sharp, was liberating. She could no longer be fooled. Observation is not only about him, it is also about you. How do you feel in his presence when the charm fades? Do you feel safe speaking freely, or do you hold your words, afraid of his reaction? Do you feel valued, or do you live in constant effort to prove your worth? Sometimes the greatest warning is not in what he does, but in what his presence makes of you. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." If a man's shadow forces you into fear, silence, or self-doubt, then the color he brings into your life is poison. Here's where patience becomes your ally. You will not see everything in a week. Manipulators know how to perform when the spotlight is on. They polish their image, they charm, they play the role well. But no mask can stay perfect forever. Over time, the cracks appear in the way he treats strangers, in the way he responds when no advantage is at stake, in the way he slips when he thinks you are not paying attention. If you are patient, he will always show himself. I once saw this with a colleague. In public, he was endlessly polite to the people above him, but to the waiter, to the cleaner, to those who could offer nothing, his voice turned sharp, dismissive, cruel. That revealed more about him than any words ever could. As Epictetus taught, if you would know a man, see how he behaves when he has nothing to fear. Observation is the window to truth if you dare to look through it. And here lies the hidden advantage. Silence unsettles those who expect reaction. If he pushes and you do not chase, if he mocks and you do not snap, if he withholds and you do not crumble, he is thrown off balance, because while he thought he was leading you in circles, you were studying his steps. You learned his playbook, and now you hold it in your hands. That knowledge is power. Observation is not passivity, it is preparation. It does not mean you ignore, nor does it mean you accept. It means you gather truth so that when the moment comes to choose whether to stay, to confront, or to walk, you do so from clarity, not confusion. And clarity is freedom. At this stage, the lesson is simple yet sharp. Do not underestimate the quiet act of watching. For those who observe silently often make the strongest, most decisive moves. They wait while others rage. They see while others are blind. And when the truth finally stands naked, they do not wonder anymore. They know. So let his actions speak, for they always will. And once you have seen clearly, you hold the choice in your hands to continue or to walk away with your dignity intact. From here, we move into the final and most decisive move of all, the strength to walk away. At this stage, picture a door half open in a dimly lit room. You linger on the threshold, unsure whether to stay or step through. Behind you lies confusion, sharp words, and nights spent doubting yourself. Beyond the door, silence. Uncertainty, yes, but also air that feels lighter. That is what it means to hold the power to walk away, not as a threat, not as performance, but as a lived truth. You will not remain where you are not valued. Now imagine the man who toys with your heart. He believes you cannot live without him. That thought is his comfort zone. He pulls away, knowing you will chase. He grows distant, certain you will wait. He plays games, believing your fear of losing him will keep you tied. As long as he holds that belief, he has no reason to change. Why would he when the prize comes without effort? But the moment he sees that you can leave, truly leave, the whole game tilts. Suddenly, his ease shatters. He must reconsider. He must face the mirror. This is not about manipulation. It is not a trick. It is the quiet knowledge of your worth, the recognition that your peace and dignity weigh more than clinging to someone who thrives on your confusion. Walking away is not punishment. It is protection. It is the shield that guards your soul. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." The same clarity applies here. If it is not love, if it is not respect, if it is not truth, then why stay? The courage to leave is not cruelty, it is alignment with virtue. I recall a story told to me once. A woman stayed with a man who withheld affection, who gave crumbs and called it a feast. She feared loneliness more than disrespect. When she finally walked away, she discovered something shocking. Loneliness was not the monster. Being with someone who made her feel invisible was. Alone, she healed. Alone, she remembered her laughter. And when she was whole again, love that was real found her. Here is the paradox. When you carry the mindset that you can walk away, you rarely need to. People feel it. They sense your strength. They know you are not desperate, not bending for scraps. And in that awareness, they treat you differently. They either rise to meet you or fall away entirely. Either path is victory. If they rise, you are valued. If they fall, you are freed. But make no mistake, this is not easy. To stand at that threshold, to grip the handle of that door, your emotions will fight you. Memories will whisper, stay. Fear will argue, you will never find better. But remember this, staying where you are drained is a slow death. It steals your energy, your confidence, your joy. And those cannot be recovered while you're still holding on to what poisons them. Seneca said, "He who fears death will never do anything worthy of a living man." In the same way, he who fears solitude will never taste the fullness of love. Loneliness is not the enemy. Being unseen in the arms of another is. When you are alone, you can heal. When you are alone, you can rebuild. When you are alone, you can make space for what is real. Think of the courage it takes to say, "I want love, but not like this." That sentence is a sword. It cuts the cord of manipulation, it severs the chains of fear, and it restores the one thing that matters most, your sovereignty. Here's the beauty. Once you know you can stand on your own, you stop begging for the bare minimum. You stop fearing the withdrawal of someone who gave only fragments. You demand the treatment you deserve, not through anger, but through presence. You no longer explain, you no longer chase, you simply walk with dignity and let the world adjust. At this stage, understand this truth. The most powerful card you hold is the ability to leave, not in fury, not in theatrics, but in calm certainty that you are enough, that your worth is not tethered to another's attention, that your life is too sacred to be wasted in games. So let him test, let him pull away, let him see the silence. And when he realizes that your steps can carry you out the door, the entire balance shifts. Because you are no longer waiting for his change. You are deciding whether his presence deserves you at all. And that, my friend, is how you outsmart the game completely. When you reach the point where you can truly walk away from someone who is playing with your emotions, everything changes. You no longer stand at the mercy of their moods or their games. You are no longer waiting to see if they will treat you right. You become the one who decides whether they deserve a place in your life at all. That shift is not loud, but it is powerful. It is the moment when the weight of their control falls away and the strength of your own presence rises. Remember this. Your worth has never depended on how much attention someone gives you. It has always been rooted in the standards you choose and the courage you carry. When you walk away with clarity, you do not lose. You reclaim your time, your peace, and your dignity. And from that place, you no longer chase respect. You command it. So let this be the reminder you carry forward. Outsmarting the game does not mean matching manipulation with more manipulation. It means refusing to play. It means honoring yourself enough to choose calm over chaos and strength over fear. That is where real freedom begins. If this message speaks to you, take a moment to subscribe so you can keep walking this path with us. In the comments, write only 3 words. I choose strength. Let it be your affirmation, a declaration that your peace is no longer negotiable. Stay strong, stay calm, and stay ready. Because the journey does not end here. The next lesson will take you even deeper into the art of becoming untouchable.